the Israeli policy goal backed by the United States is to engage in a massive state-sanctioned crime against humanity, to depopulate, to remove the people of Gaza from the Gaza Strip to other territory, wherever that may be. That under international law is not just a war crime, it's a crime against humanity. This is a disaster, what we're seeing in Gaza. Let's remember just a few key facts. Gaza is one of the most densely populated parts of the world. It has a population of approximately 2 million people. 70% are refugees, half of them are children. And since October the 7th, Gaza has been subjected to a state-sanctioned policy of genocide by the state of Israel, backed by the West. There was a ceasefire that was in place on January the 19th of this year. That ceasefire was broken on March the 17th by the state of Israel, backed again by the United States and the West. And since then, the population of Gaza has effectively been starved into submission as a result of this unfolding, humanitarian and human rights catastrophe. And because of global pressure, Israel and the United States negotiated this plan to have the United Nations and international aid organizations removed from the equation of distributing aid according to international law, according to international norms that could get aid to the people who desperately need it. And they came up with this plan called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which has nothing to do with humanitarianism, but is basically an American-Israeli plan to use humanitarian aid to help expel the people from Gaza. This is very much the official policy of not just the state of Israel, but of the United States as well. Recall that in February of this year, at a meeting in the White House, Donald Trump announced his vision for the future of Gaza, which is to remove the population and send them to other countries and to build a Riviera of the Middle East, a sort of a Las Vegas on the ruins of the what's left of Gaza, and to build us like a mini Dubai in this piece of land. And so this humanitarian aid operation is actually a deliberate plan and policy of the state of Israel to force Palestinians from different parts of Gaza, starving, broken, desperate for food, to gather at these so-called humanitarian distribution sites, which would then make it much easier for Israel to then, commit its final act of genocide, and that is to forcibly remove the people of Gaza across the border into Egypt. The UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, rightfully has been outraged over what's been happening around this so-called aid distribution, calling for an international investigation. Today, at least 27 Palestinians, hundreds more, were killed in the chaos of this American-Israeli plan to, use humanitarian aid to force Palestinians to gather at the south of the Gaza Strip. A couple of days ago, there was another massacre, and I suspect more are forthcoming. And the level of dehumanization, the level of sort of pain and suffering that we're seeing from starving people who are just, desperate to find food to feed their families against the backdrop that I just described is just shocking. One struggles for words to describe this atrocious behavior that, fundamentally is a byproduct of American and Israeli policy. But I also want to point out that it is the countries of the Arab and Islamic world that also bear a responsibility. Many of these countries have a lot of leverage over the United States. And they could stop this moral obscenity tomorrow if they wanted to. They choose not to, for reasons that we could discuss. But there's a lot of countries here that I think are complicit in this ongoing horror show that we're seeing in Gaza, that has made Gaza, the preeminent moral issue of the 21st century. It's not credible at all. I mean, look, Israel has a very long and sordid track record of making exactly the same type of statements when it wants to pursue its policies of subjugation, occupation, and control. It claims that there were Palestinians who were acting in suspicious ways. It then uses that accusation to fire upon Palestinians. There's never a serious and independent and consistent, policy of accountability for these types of, atrocities. And Israel gets away with it time and time and time again. And it gets away with it because it has the support of the West, primarily the United States, that refuses to attach any consequences for this type of extreme behavior that Israel has consistently demonstrated against, against the Palestinians. So, the consequences of this is it sets a very bad pattern for humanitarian aid principles, because if Israel can get away with it, then so can other countries that are involved in conflict situations and choose to violate, the human rights of people that they are in conflict with, without any, regard for their basic humanity. So, that's how I read what's going on. It's a very bad precedent, and it just, undermines any sense of international order, respect for international law, and any attempt to sort of create the type of, international, norms and rules that I think are required to have a more functional and peaceful world. Basically confirms what we already know, that the Biden administration, for which Matthew Miller was one of the leading spokesmen, effectively was providing cover for Israel to engage in state-sanctioned war crimes, while the United States, covered up those war crimes and deliberately lied to the international community. And Miller now is coming and basically confessing that, we all knew that war crimes were being committed, but we chose to deny them to defend what Israel was seeking to do in Gaza, which effectively is to turn Gaza into an unlivable piece of land that would force Palestinians to then flee. So this is an admission of guilt that the United States was deeply complicit in the genocide in Gaza. And I think the next step is there has to be accountability over what the United States has done and continues to do in Gaza. The other way of thinking about it is that when I saw, this statement by Matthew Miller acknowledging what, is now non-controversial, that Israel has, committed war crimes. Now, given the horrendous situation in Gaza and what's coming next, which will be more suffering, all those people who now want to sort of clear their conscience and, say that they have some sort of, human values or human rights values that they uphold. Now they're all coming out and confessing that, yes, we knew things were really bad. And there's a famous expression that, the rats start to scurry off a sinking ship, just before it goes underwater. And that's what we're seeing right now with Matthew Miller and these grotesque comments that, basically confirm that the Trump administration was, the Biden administration was deeply complicit in all of the war crimes that Israel was conducting after October the 7th that continue right up until today. Now, what could change the equation and that could make an immediate difference tomorrow, that could save millions of lives in Gaza, is if one or more of these countries in the region, I'm talking about specifically the Arab countries that have close relationships with the United States and recently signed trillions of dollars in economic deals with the United States, if one of these leaders were to pick up the phone and tell Donald Trump that we are freezing all negotiation and discussion over our economic relationship with you and all of these deals that were signed until the people of Gaza have access to clean water and to food. That's all it would take. Now, none of these dictators in the Arab world are willing to make that phone call because they don't care about human rights. They don't care about the suffering of the Palestinians. They care about staying in power and perpetuating their families' despotic rule in their own countries. And so they want to cater to the United States and whoever might be in the White House right now. But there is a lot of leverage that I think countries in the region, can have to stop this immense suffering that we're seeing in Palestine. Just to cite another example, let's not forget that this, siege and blockade of Gaza that is directly resulting in this humanitarian catastrophe is also a function of the policies of the Egyptian government. Gaza has a border with Egypt. Egypt tomorrow could break that border and feed the starving people of Gaza. Why doesn't it do so? Why doesn't General Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, knowing that there is a genocide happening on the other side of that border, why doesn't he intervene? And the answer, I think, is pretty clear to anyone knows what's going on. Is because the dictator in Cairo cares more about his own political fortunes, his own military staying in power than he does about defending the human rights of the poor and suffering people of Gaza. So he'll always defer to the United States, and he'll always defer to Israel rather than deferring to the basic human rights of the Palestinian people. So I think these are the things that have to happen.